Lesson 3.2 has students apply their understanding of weight and mass by making hands-on measurements and observations using some measuring tools. This lesson consists of 3 parts. In the first part, the teacher demonstrates how to use a spring scale to measure weight and a balance scale to measure mass. Next, students in small groups use these scales to measure the weight and mass of pennies. Then students will graph this data and analyze it to establish trends or patterns. So starting from the beginning, the lesson opens with the class reviewing the terms gravity, weight, and mass, as well as how an astronaut's weight changes when on the moon, even though the astronaut's mass does not change. The teacher then goes over a spring scale and a balance scale, demonstrating how to use each type of scale and recording information about each type for the students to then record in their science journals. The spring scales are found in this kit, Forces, Motion, and Patterns, while the balance scales are found in the FOSS measurement kits, which are stored at schools from previous years. Students should be shown how to calibrate each scale. For a spring scale, we adjust the vertical tab until it aligns with the 0 indicator. And for the balance scale, we want to adjust the central slider until it aligns with the central line indicator and the balance is perfectly even. To use the spring scale, we'll place objects in a plastic bag from the kit and we'll hang the plastic bag from the scale until the plunger then comes to a rest. To use the balance scale, we're going to set an object on one side and then we'll use the mass set from the measurement kit to measure an equivalent amount of matter on the other side. If a mass set is not available, other common math manipulatives, such as unifix cubes or base 10 blocks, could be used instead. Just make sure if you're using these other manipulatives to do a quick online search to find out what the mass of one of these manipulatives is, so students could then add up the mass of all of those manipulatives to equal the mass of the balanced object. Students will use these scales to explore the weight and mass of groups of pennies, and they'll record their measurements on the pennies recording sheet provided in this lesson. After students have had time to measure, a class data table is created, and the teacher guides students on how to use the data from this table to make a line graph. Students should then interpret the data on the graph to determine a trend or pattern, which should show that as they increase the number of pennies, both the weight and the mass increase in predictable ways. Lesson 3.2 calls for about 50 pennies per small group. And it's recommended to ask families if they could send between 15 and 20 pennies in with their student in the days leading up to this lesson to ensure that each small group of students has enough pennies for the group. If pennies are not available for whatever reason, any uniform set of identical objects could work as well, such as marbles or building blocks, etc. This lesson connects with standards 5PS2.3 and 5PS2.4 by giving students a guided, hands-on opportunity to explore mass and weight. In the following lessons, students will explore how the mass and the size of planets will impact the weight of the objects on their surface.